Take me back to the angel realm today.
All right, all right. I think, yep, sound should be here. Welcome, everyone. Super special episode today. I thought after the recent, let's say, couple months or so, we were talking about, changes that we didn't like all too much. But I think in the history of this game, we also we had some changes that were really good. And I would say also underrated. Because a lot of times, at least I think, a lot of times good changes come into the game, but nobody really knows yet they're good, right? So nobody comes back and says, hey, by the way, it was like pretty nice that we got this. And everyone happens to, take them for granted a little bit. So today, this episode is kind of dedicated to these changes, or dedicated to the devs that make these changes, to be quite honest. Because I think maybe they don't get the credit they deserve on the good stuff sometimes. So for those devs that are out there trying to make good changes, the guys that care, right? And for us, to be honest, I had a fun time making this list alone and talking to some guys leading up to this. So it should be good fun talking about like some good old school stuff, or in general stuff. Maybe there's a really good change like recently that's on the list. So
you subscribed to
I asked
that's so hot.
I asked the guests today to at least have a top 3 of their most like favorite changes of all time. So when I personally think of that, it's more like so first of all, it has to be good, but how impactful is it? And like also, but people might have their own criteria, right? And I think that comes probably down to like what they do in the game and like who they are, right? Everyone has a bias. So let me give you guys a super quick introduction. Yeah, I put the sub sound off already. Sorry, I was a little late here. But let me give everyone a super quick introduction here. All right, I also had to turn off the other sounds. Sorry. All right. So number 1, Arcia Elkin just recently got onto the CSM, and I think it's more than half a term, right? So it's not like you're coming in for like the last week to see what actually happened, right? But there's still some like good time left on the CSM. You just barely didn't make it in the election, but Pickles dropped his seat and you picked it up. And Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And yeah, in terms of bias, I think last time you were on, which was like super surprising to many probably and to me, like the role play aspect and stuff. I had like that perspective. I never heard it like that. So like I thought that was pretty interesting. So maybe I don't know if there's gonna be a role play change on your list, but you know, you definitely have a unique perspective, which you know I always like. Then next one, everyone knows him, Sutonia, big Eve streamer, also CSM. How many terms? Like I don't even know, 5 so 4.
No, I've only done 3. I did 2. I did system 12 and 13. Then I didn't run for 14 and 15, and I ran recently for 16. So I've only been on 3 terms.
So Sutonia, streamer, CSM, small scaler, but he, you know, you're also part of bigger fleets here and there. So has been around for a long time. Very much a theory crafter too. So very knowledgeable. Also has been around for a long time. So when it comes to all the changes, that might just be, you know, good. And then the next one, Wolf's Dragoon, one of the main FCs in Volta, and he actually jumped in on super short notice. So thanks for that. And yeah, they're doing like mid-scale stuff. I think everyone is aware what Volta's doing. Mid-scale, some large-scale stuff every now and then, but they also do some low, you know, small-scale stuff, right?
Yeah, we do it. We do a variety of things. Right now we've been a little bit inactive, but we don't have to talk about why that is. But thanks for having me.
All right. So who wants to make the first? Who has like the most surprising point on the list? Like who thinks who can really surprise with like one of the top changes that we don't have on the list for sure? No, what you think you think
I
we all
think I've got
agreed?
one that would probably be overlooked because it's been so long, and it's just like a given now. And I think that it would be. There used to be a time when both Triage and Siege was 10 minutes, and they reduced it to 5 minutes and simultaneously buffed Dreads and like reworked some of them. And that was probably one of the like biggest, most like impactful changes at the time. Not so much these days, but at the time, just because it like Dreads were not used, and then they suddenly were used for everything. Dread bombs became a thing right after that, and like the first like Titan died to like a Shadow Cartel Dread bomb or something. Not first Titan ever, but like you know what I mean, to a Dread bomb.
Yeah. Was that like all triages though, right? I mean,
yeah, that was
you
old
said triage,
too.
obviously.
Yeah, old triages was still a thing where you could do combat refitting and stuff like that effectively, and it also reduced it from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, which was huge. It also brought triage out a lot more, which was tons of fun in low sec where I was.
I gotta say, I don't know what it would look like if it was a 10 minutes triage cycle or siege. Did they change both siege and triage? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they did both. It's been a while, so I don't remember exactly, but I think it was both. And yeah, I think you would be pretty much dead all the time if it was like 10 minutes. Like especially because the jump ranges used to be better than 2, right? You used to have way more.
Yeah,
jump
and there was
range.
no fatigue or anything, right? So you
No
could teleport
fatigue.
across the map.
Yeah.
You could do like 5 mids in 5 minutes or something ridiculous if you had like cap up Archons ready.
Yeah, those were the fucking crazy times. Yeah,
Back then,
yeah,
you just carriers and dreads dropped on everything because you could jump around so fast.
And
like I had a Titan dropped on me and a Tormentor in Faction Warfare.
And yeah, supers moved around so quick. So the guys that had the dominant super force on the server, really, right? We all know who that was at the time. You know, they had Cynos everywhere. It wasn't hard for them to get around. You know, put a cap fit on there, and within 10 minutes it can be anywhere. Really, 5 minutes, not so much, really, right? So yeah, I agree. Wasn't on the list, right? And I've got a long list here. Like, so we're gonna go over the changes we have on the top 3, and then let's see what else I've got on the list after that. But yeah, I think everyone agrees that was a good change. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun. I mean, that brought out the age for me in Losec, where we had like Shadows of the Federation, Shadow Cartel, and I was in Snuff at the time, and like we really started like tracking dreads were a thing too. But there was a lot of just suddenly all at once, basically at the forefront, everybody started using dreads, and it was just tons of fun, really good
Yeah.
brawls.
Yep, definitely a good one. How about Satonia? What's your number one?
My number one is probably the well, I guess it's like kind of like a big thing, but I have like the Retribution expansion as like my number one thing, and that was when they basically rebalanced pretty much like every Tech 1 frigate, destroyer, and cruiser. Before then, like almost like pretty much like any Yamaha ship that wasn't like a Harbinger was trash. Like everything below a Harbinger was like pure trash, basically. Like they just didn't have cruisers, for example, and like the old Omen used to have 4 turrets, and then the Mauler used to have 5 turrets. So, but the Omen had a damage bonus, and the Mauler didn't. But because the Mauler had a 5th turret, it just had the damage bonus of the Omen, so it was just better in every way. There was tons of examples like that. And
Tormentor
like,
was a mining ship before that, and then it became an actually good frigate.
yeah, and like at least for I was already invested in like frigate PvP back then, and there was basically only like the frigate tier list was basically like 5 ships. It was like the best thing in the world was the Dramiel because it was overpowered then, before they fixed it in the Crucible expansion. And then you had like Tyrannus Slicer as like the number 2s, and then every and then you had like Rifter maybe as like number 3, and then everything else was like pure trash beneath it, or like
That
not
was
worth the price.
that was my number one too, actually, because
really?
I was faction warfare for years back then, and it changed how I played so much because all the frigates, destroyers, and cruisers suddenly became useful when there were like 2 of them that were useful before. It like you saw so many different kinds of ships, and you continue to see so many different kinds of ships today just running around, and you can pretty much take any ship you like the theme of, and make it do something because it has a role now.
Yeah, and this one also ties into like another one I have kind of, and that's Tiracide as well. Kind of with the ships, right? The way the ships used to be balanced is that there was like different, like you'd go up tiers. So like obviously like a Harbinger would be way better than a Prophecy. All the time, like Myrmidon was just a better Brutix most of the time. There was a few examples where it was like a little bit different because of like the role that they had. But back then, for example, like an Atron had like 2 lows, 2 mids. It was trash. Like the only reason to fly an Atron is because you didn't have enough money to buy an Incursus. Or the only reason why you'd ever fly like a Tormento is because you couldn't afford a Punisher, or not Tormento. Back then, it was the Inquisitor was like a missile.
Yeah, Inquisitor
for
had
some reason.
missiles.
You know what? I do have that change on my list, but very far at the bottom. I think I underestimated the impact it had, actually. Because also that was at a time I might not, like, I wasn't too involved in, like, Tech 1 cruiser, frigate and stuff. Like, I don't know what time that actually was. Was it 2010, 11, 12 or something?
I think it was like 2012, 2011. I'll have to check.
It was like the end of 2012, like December, I think.
All right, yeah. Underrated change, probably. And yes, I'm surprised you both got it on like the number 1 slot. What do you got on number 2? Oh, actually, Wolf, what you want to say?
So
That was gonna be one of mine, but I'll have to change it now. But that was definitely gonna be one.
my number 2 is ACL bookmarks.
Hmm.
So like as somebody who most of my operations are a lot of small groups working together, the ACL bookmark change like just renovated what I could do. Like back then, if you wanted to pass bookmarks to people in different groups, or even within your own alliance, you had to like save them as physical objects and make a copy for like every individual group to put into their bookmarks, and you only had your one corp bookmark folder. And it was kind of awful. Now you can have like bookmarks for each like subgroup of groups that you're in. Like so if you like run public fleets, or if you have like different coalitions you work with for different things, it's just like the greatest change in the world for me.
So
Yeah, you could even go further back, right, and say corp bookmarks, because they were a huge change, right? I'm sure it was like a pain, probably, especially for FCs or people running specific comps like sniper battleship comps where like every single person had to have like a sniper bookmark or something.
Yeah, and you had to trade them and stuff.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you have to make like 200 copies of it and then trade it to like everyone in your
I mean,
life.
if you go back far enough, everybody needed warp to 0 bookmarks of the gates they used.
It's
because
that's on
you
my list
couldn't
too.
warp to
Yeah,
0.
yeah. You could not warp to 0 to gates. Just imagine, right? And then I think the bookmark thing is a good good point in terms of like what we take for granted. Because you went only one step back, but Suetonia's like, but you remember there's another step that we already forgot, which is the like
Yeah.
we didn't have any bookmark folders. Now we have ACL bookmark folders. But what I want to say is I do believe it's a net positive, that change, but I think there's also a negative part to it, which is it enables also big groups to work together super easily and stuff, right? I see that all the time, obviously. So, you know, it's not all perfectly, like maybe having a smaller, tight-knit group, you know, you had more of an advantage with the old bookmark system, but I don't know. I think I wouldn't want to miss this change, that's for sure, right? So I'm just saying, there's always like at least there's a part where it's, you know, can also like have a negative impact. But yeah, I think that's a good one actually.
Yeah, it lets everybody pretty much work together more easily. But I feel like smaller groups depend more on working together with other groups than bigger groups do. Obviously, they can work together and then become like super group, right? But
And I tell you what, I didn't even say my number one, but it leads perfectly to my number one change, which is straight up wormholes. Like, there used to be no wormholes at all in this game. And then one day they got introduced. But sure, with a different vision of what they became. But we got wormholes and, you know, it enabled so many things, right? You could get from A to B with the shortcuts. You could live in there. Like after a while, people figured out, actually, it's not too bad to live in here full time. And then what it became now, right? I think that was like one of the most impactful changes overall. Yeah, the bookmark part, right? And that was a big part of that too, right?
yeah, wormholes are amazing just for moving around. Like, even if you don't live in a wormhole, if you plan not to live in a wormhole and not to go kill sleepers or anything like that, just being able to get from point A to point B, or like I've used wormholes to like escape people pursuing me, jump in the wormhole and be gone, right?
I use
Like,
them all the time, obviously. Yeah.
so a lot of times, like when I'm doing a roam, I'll filament out and I'll come back via a wormhole, or like Thera, which is a wormhole, right? And it just, if you know how to use wormholes, you are like way up here compared to somebody who has to walk the entire way, because you can do all sorts of like things where you come out of nowhere because of it.
And you know, Thera, you mentioned Thera should be like maybe not on the top 5 of all time, but somewhere on the list on really good changes too, right? It's like
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
definitely up there.
Yeah, I remember I got really excited. I was probably, I don't remember actually, but I probably tried to like figure out if we wanted to stage in there as in it, right? Because at the time we were probably doing something else. We weren't like all tied down in SOP and stuff. And I'm like, dudes, so many connections. Look at this.
Yeah. Well, there was a
Yeah.
time with you know, with mini caps out, many ways to play it, and Volta had their heyday, which I just barely missed. So I'll just kind of be envious of Suetonia here.
Yeah, it was great when we were killing like a super like almost every day.
Yeah, I can only
Never
imagine.
not keep ships in Thera.
Yeah.
You never
Yeah.
know when you're gonna need to reship somewhere hostile and there'll be a Thera hull nearby. Like,
Yeah.
it happens so often.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
it's something
scouts
we-
all got ships in there.
Yeah, it's something we still use. I mean, so many groups use it, right? We just don't stage there currently. But yeah, it was a huge change. Very, very fun.
Yeah. All right, number 2 for Suetonia. What do you say?
Well, this one might be a little bit controversial, I guess.
I like it already.
I'd say like ESS for me, number 2. It's quite a recent change.
I like
you're right.
ESSs, yeah.
I like him too, but I know they're controversial. I know there's people out there that really don't like him. They have legit points, but
Honestly, my favorite part about the ESS is not even like going into the ESS and stealing the money. It's just having the dead space available to force a fight on where people can't warp to each other on the grid. Or
I
drop
agree.
drop me with Sinos, right? Or
Yeah.
combat probe me.
Yeah.
Just because like I grew up fighting in faction warfare like for my first like 7 years of my playing the game, or some 7 years of me learning how to play the game, like 2002 to 2012 to 2019 or something like that. And you fight around these complexes that are dead space, so you learn how to fight in the dead space. And just having that available, like, oh, this group is way bigger than me, we can go here and force a fight on our terms. And it's fantastic.
I agree 100%. Exactly my point too. That it just gives FCs another tool, and a powerful tool to make a fight happen that usually wouldn't happen, maybe because you're not gonna just whelp the fleet for the sake of it. I mean, depending on what it is. If you're flying Tech 1 Thrashers, you might as well. But if you're in something little expensive, at least you would think about like ways to get the fight, but squeeze a little bit of an advantage out for your fleet, and that's one of the ways. Yeah, Drifter Warmods do the same thing, by the way, right? Drifter Warmods are very different. You can't really light a sign, or you can't bomb on that grid. If you bubble the beacon, people will land on 0 on the beacon. Yes, there's other ways around this, but skill and experience comes into play there way more, right? Suddenly, because you can, use it to your advantage. Yeah, I 100% agree, right? But then also inside the ESS, that's probably what Sutonia is the bigger fan from offering.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I've gotten like a ton more like fights with just like Tech 1 cruisers and stuff, just because like you can actually impact people. Like a lot of the time, there'll be like 2 Ishtars in like every other system, right? But they're just gonna dock up and stay permadocked while you're there, and they're never actually gonna form or do anything about you, especially if you're solo, because they just don't really care, right? But like forcing them to like actually have to like do something, it actually means that you can create pressure in like Tech 1 cruises and like force fights and stuff. So, I mean, most of the time you get like turbo blobbed with like Marauders and Recons, but at least they have to do something.
Yeah,
And I kind of feel like it gives players like a lot of options against when you think people are botting, those kind of systems, you can like just steal from the bots essentially, right? So it gives us like some like player agency in like dealing with people we think are botting too. Even though I do think CCP's actually done a really good job recently with like anti-botting measures since they did that Vegas 2019 presentation. I've seen so much fewer bots in space since then.
Also, I think on the height of bots, it was like we weren't talking about like some Ishtar bots or some Myrmidons. We were talking supers here. It used to be the case that you would see regions full of Nyxes botting. That used to be a thing. And that's
Did you
definitely
see?
not a thing anymore.
I think was it Kids with Guns Alliance? I think they were test renters at the time. They lost 9 Nyxes in a single day because some guy some wormholders figured out their like reset timer or something.
No, wait. No. What happened there was, man.
They anchored a bubble in their POS grid or something over a blue character. I don't know. I can't remember. But
yeah, they figured out some trick, I think. But wasn't that like a change that came actually? Since we're talking about the best changes, there was something that happened. Or was it the local stuff? I forgot what it was. There was something. These guys just didn't pay attention to it. Or maybe, I don't know. Maybe they just figured out how the bots operated. Maybe you're right. And then just like bubbled the beacon, and he just didn't pay attention in those 2-3 hours, and then he lost all his bottom
they all
Nyxes.
died on next to towers. So they I guess they must have. I guess they probably just put like got a blue character to anchor a bubble or something on their POS grid from the like direction of the Anoms or something.
Yeah, I forgot what it was, but yeah, they had a trick. And yeah.
But yeah, it's very rare to find like bots now, I think, and like when you do find them, if you report them, you get an email normally within about a week. Before, like I remember roaming some like regions like O Mist before mangoes were there, and there would just be like 4 Gilas in every single system, a tower. They would just instantly pause up. Same with the Inais, and they were so obviously botting, and it would take CCP probably like 6 to 7 weeks to even ban them. Whereas now it seems like there's like far less like super obvious
I agree.
botting.
Yeah.
And now, like when you do see it and you report it, like normally they get banned within like 5 to 6 days.
Yeah, I think
Generally,
it has to do with like it's not as like it's not worth it really to bot. Like you get like a little ISK probably, right? So there's less bots. If there's less bots, those those efforts to get the bots are focused on a smaller group, so they're gonna be more successful, right? And I think that all like plays together. So I think botting is not a major issue right now at the time we speak. Sure, there's bots out there, and it sucks, but I don't think they are like a major issue right now, which is nice.
So
All right.
another change that I think we touched upon before the show: removal of learning skills. Learning skills. So for anybody unfamiliar with learning skills, when you've created a character, you know how attributes work, where like you have more of a tribute, you train faster. Back before learning skills were removed, you had to train these skills that basically increased these attributes basically. So it was like, if you don't train these first, you just train slower. There are skills that made you train faster in the attribute categories basically. So new players would come in and they felt like they had to, for like their first month, train all these skills that just basically, okay, first month you can't play the game almost, right? Because if you don't train these skills first, you just lose time basically. And they added nothing to the game, and they got removed, and that was fantastic. And I think it makes it way more accessible to new players.
Yeah, they're also on my list, pretty far up there. I remember being that newbie who's like, should I skill for this ship now, or should I first learn the learning skills on 5?
Learn how to learn.
Yeah, like man, that didn't feel good at all. Because you would always like, if you then decide to skill into a ship, you would feel bad thinking, shit, but long term, this is not the smartest move, right? And you know how all the EVE Online nerds are really, right? Min-maxing and stuff. That doesn't really make sense, not logical, right?
Yeah, but do you want to wait another 2 weeks to fly your favorite ship at max skills? I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like, so people were forced to make bad decisions. Right? That's basically what it was.
Yeah.
It's just not good, yeah.
And they
And,
weren't
like-
even selling SP at the time. They weren't even selling injectors.
That's
They
true.
really missed out, didn't they?
And like, it also ties into the racial attribute changes back in the day, where each different race was locked to a certain set of attributes, and like Akura was just like way better than anybody else. So like the Galaxy was like half Akura, which just made no sense.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes the Galaxy more boring if everybody is the same cookie, like the same race, because of stat efficiency. Like, we have a lot of really cool bloodlines in this game that have really cool themes and styles and aesthetics, and everybody was just pushed to one of them because it was better to be. But now you get to individually set your attributes no matter what race you are. So we have a lot more diversity in New Eden.
I was never aware of like how that actually all worked. I just know my character is like an Akura, and I've got 2 extra points that if I were to do a remap, I would have to, overall remove 2 of my attribute points. Right? That's all I know. So there's probably still a lot of characters out there that have that.
Yeah.
So I never did a
Yeah.
remap ever.
Yeah, because
That's-
Akura had like 2 less charisma or something than the baseline. That's why you have the 2 extra points.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Akura was like the ugliest characters ever in the old character creator that was how they were balanced, right? They were just like mega ugly. CSP made the charisma, actually reflect in the character's appearance.
Probably. All right. Well, my second. I wanna say my second point on the list. Also another like far-reaching one. I think is the warp speed. The warp speed changes, where they. Oh, I should be more accurate actually, saying the warp acceleration adjustment, because like before that patch, every ship accelerated into warp and to their top speed at the same speed or at the same rate, which then means the actual warp speed accounted for like a way shorter time of travel than it does now, right? Where everyone, like, if you have 12 AU warp speed, well, you're gonna accelerate onto that 12 AU warp speed super quick too. But before that, you would just be all 3 AU acceleration and then your travel speed and then deceleration the same. So the actual difference between ships, like different warp speeds, was just way less. And then the travel speed in general was just way up for smaller ships, cruisers and below. And I liked it a lot. I mean, I would have loved to see it actually speed up also for battleships and battlecruisers, to be quite honest. I would love to see them say, okay, let's give them a little bit more speed, but I'm glad we got that patch, that's for sure. And it impacted everyone in all of EU.
Yeah, that's everyone in every area of space, from just people moving around to people who do a lot of combat where you often have to chase people into warp. Or if you're trying to like combat scan and warp to somebody and grab them, how fast you warp. Often the difference is seconds between whether you grab them or not. So if you warp faster, if you accelerate faster and warp, a lot more action happens, right?
Yeah, when it comes to scepters, dictors, and so on, yep. They're just like so much faster. I remember when they first announced that patch or announced the changes, there was a video out of like a scepter, what it would look like with the new changes, and they scaled it down a little bit from there. But man, that scepter like crossed the system so quick, and everyone's minds were blown. And was like, oh my god, insane. I remember.
Yeah, I wish they raised the warp deceleration cap. Right now, it's 6 AU a second. Like anything higher than 6 AU a second, it doesn't actually speed up like your like slowing down speed. Because CSP was worried, right? Because if you had like a super like high warp speed, you would like appear instantly next to them, like on their screen.
Oh, I didn't even know.
If you like warp to someone in an Anom or something, you just load the Anom instantly and appear next to them on their screen. So that's why they like put the warp deceleration cap thing in. But I think they could definitely buff it, man. Like make it 12 AU a second.
You know what? Especially, I mean, I'm not sure about the 12 AU a second and then the acceleration deceleration thing for scepters and stuff. Maybe it would be too quick, but I think the sweet spot is a little bit more on the speedy side, right? We're still a little bit too slow, especially battleships, battlecruisers. We're just like the travel speed is too slow. That's why you don't see them all that much. You don't see battlecruiser or battleship fleets.
Yeah, I think
getting them places
battleships are actually back to what they used to be, right? Because the retribution expansion is when they did the warp speed changes. Best expansion ever. Just gonna put that out there again. But every ship basically used to warp at 3 AU a second, right? Except for like frigates, interceptors, and there was like some weird exceptions. Yeah. But now battleships warp at 3 AU a second again. So now they're back to where they used to be, like in the old days. But yeah, I kind of wish CSP sped things up a little bit, just because it makes like roaming and moving around a bit more
you know what,
interesting.
I think originally they had in mind that every ship would a battleship would stay the same speed travel wise, and then every ship below would speed up. But then they decided, no, we go with cruisers, and cruisers maintained the actual speed, and then everything below cruisers would get faster, everything above cruisers would get slower. And I'm not sure if they ever changed that, to be honest. They might have.
Yeah, they did. They did a few buffs, right? They back when they changed it, battle cruisers whooped to 2.5, and then they buffed them to 2.7. I think they buffed destroyers, Tech 1 destroyers as well. At some point, maybe I think I'm wrong on that. I think they buffed Tech 1 battle cruisers because of the like discrepancy between frigates and destroyers. Because destroyers used to whoop to 4.5, frigates whoop to 5, but then cruisers warped at 3 and battle cruisers used to warp at 2.5, so they bumped them up to 2.7. So like it will be the same as like the balance between destroyers and frigates, because destroyers warp 10% slower than frigates. So
I just had a crazy idea, right? So technically, you could make the argument: the faster the ships warp and stuff or travel, the smaller the game kind of gets, because you can get places in in certain time frames. But what it's like especially powerful if you don't have a shit ton of players in your area. You want to get somewhere else. If it takes like an hour to get there, you're not gonna do it, right? So what if the warp speed depends on like the number of people in your region? You know what I mean? Or like something like that. If you make it like flexible, right? So like a dead region, yeah, you can travel through there super fast. But if it's a busy region, you're gonna have the normal warp speed. You know what I mean? It would be kind
You could
of
change it.
funny.
You could change it to be fleet dependent, and that way
Yeah,
I can
you-
run
you
away
need to
from
do,
block fleets more easily.
you need to do your mass on long range gun idea, Pando. Like warp speed penalties on long range guns, warp speed buffs on short range guns. So then like some blaster guys can actually warp faster than you and like catch up to you.
Yeah. I mean, so I always said mass at the beginning, but obviously what I wanted was like more of like a speed penalty on long range guns. That's like, it doesn't have to be much, but make sure like a blaster board is faster than a railgun board. That's how you do it, right? But yeah, maybe the warp speed is the way to go then. It's not as impactful, and you wouldn't have to worry too much that stuff gets like OP. But yeah, blaster boards, maybe they should be like way faster to warp around.
And then you wait until the meta becomes like communion with like 4 artillery and then 1 autocannon fitted.
No. Well, obviously you would
Wait.
make it. You get the penalty of like that one gun, right? You would say like short range guns don't get a boost. I would say you would just give a penalty to the long range guns. So but I don't know.
It makes sense. You're giving these are good. Maybe these will be best changes ever in the future, Pando.
Yeah, we're gonna make another show at some point and say best future changes ever, where we just predict the future.
How long of this show will be talking about Citadels?
Oh god, it's gonna be like an hour and 20 of Citadels, and then 10 minutes of stuff around Citadels, I guess. Yeah, there's rumors out there. They're looking at Citadels. I'm just saying. But we're not going to talk about Citadels today. We said we wouldn't.
You said you weren't
guys.
going to talk about it.
Yeah.
You said the first person to talk about it be kicked. So
I gotta kick myself off the podcast now.
Yeah.
I kind of baited you into it though. So
maybe it was Atonia who said Citadels first. All right, who got a good number 2 or 3 or whatever?
I haven't said my second yet, which was going to be probably not surprising at all, given I came from Lowsec, was in Snuffbox, and being in Volta. I was going to say just the introduction of Tech 3 cruisers. Fucking great. Great set of ships. Really fun. Always had fun flying them. No matter how broken they were at various times, they were always a blast to fly. And not so much now, but they were.
But I think they still have that niche.
It wasn't as impactful. Like right on release, they weren't that impactful, and then they became super impactful as people adopted them, obviously, right, and trained into them because they couldn't be injected into immediately. But yeah, as people picked them up, they were huge. They're so fun. The fleets
weren't they introduced with wormholes together? Is that what you just said? Yeah. So
very tied to yours.
Yeah, you could put that together kind of in the combination. I mean, they were also the main reason people wanted to live in wormhole space in the first place, because it was worth it doing stuff there.
Yeah.
And that lesson, they kind of put that now onto Pochven, I feel like, because now people are like, yeah, you can make ISK in Pochven. So there is an incentive to do it, and they fixed some of these issues that kept people from actually going there. And now Pochven is kind of picking up, right? So that's, by the way, like another episode in the coming weeks that I'm looking at, like a Pochven episode. Like, I don't know shit about Pochven, to be quite honest. So I gotta, figure it out.
That war last year in Pochven honestly had some of my best fights ever. That big war that happened in the middle of last year.
So there was like the war during the big Nullsec war. There was a war in Pochven going on too, and people just didn't pay too much attention to it.
that started out of our peers shooting each other.
And that might be the reason why it was so good, because all the big guys were all busy doing other shit, and you guys, like, with smaller groups, had like more of your own little war going on, right? Sorry, your mic is not activated.
Sorry, it saw some pretty big battles. Like the last one had at least like 600-700 people in it. The biggest one, which was the destruction of the Asbel in Weirshota. So like there are some really poppin' fights. I think like the best part about the fights is that there were no capital ships, because only the caps that existed in the previous low sec systems exist in Pochven, and most of the
Never got
systems that
undocked.
were fought in were previously high sec. So there's no capital ships in any of those systems.
Yeah, and there's like there might be a handful of capitals out there, but nobody really uses them, right? Because like the value of them
Not
is
true.
insane. Oh, really?
I still
use
saw
them.
them in some of
Yeah.
the road citadel in
Yeah.
defenses in Navula, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
some
Yeah,
people
so the-
use Titans there because you can't get scouted. It's like a lot harder to pre-scout you there, right? Because there's no local. So like you can do blops and like Titan bridges from.
Yeah, you can bridge out.
You can bridge out without like showing your hand, basically, right? Because it's kind of hidden. People don't really see it unless they're in Pochven.
Yeah, I mean, it shows up on the map, right? I know we looked at Portman before to bridge stuff out of and to do stuff. You basically, if you're on the time, like, people can't see it on the map. It's rare that people do check the map nowadays, though, right? Because intel
Yeah,
is usually
and
pretty important.
and no local too, right? So they can't just see, Panda's bridging character is here. Maybe I should say something in intel. They don't see it unless they're like actually looking for it.
Yeah.
Can you locate people in Pochven? I don't know. Like if you run a locator agent on someone,
I've never tried. Maybe I should try. Yeah.
So that would be kind of funny too, right? If
I would
they can run
expect
locators on you.
I would expect the same message of as you get
Yeah.
wormholes, but maybe you can. Maybe it's
probably
different.
is it going to give back? So usually the message you get from a locate agent is like he's in system ABC in the constellation la 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 in the la 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 region. But is it going to say, is it Pochven? Or is it going to just say the old region or something, right? Who knows?
Depends if the locator agent is very nationalistic. They're from the Republic, and they really still insist that Skarkon is in Molten Heath, right?
Maybe he just doesn't want to believe it. No.
I
He's
mean,
like,
the
"No, don't do."
empires do still see like those systems as like their systems that are occupied right now.
I guess, yeah.
But that's another topic for another show.
Yeah, by the way, I mean, we're all positive and stuff, but like, what happened to the Edencom stuff? Did they finally get some stuff out of it? Or I don't even remember.
Yeah, I mean, for our standing, no. I mean, I like the Edencom ships, but that's not a standing reward. That's just friendly Zeppy boys. We didn't really get much for our effort.
Oh, well, that's something CCP should be maybe looking at, but yeah, that's part of the future best changes ever.
Yeah, right.
All right, who got like a number 3? ready to go?
Off-grid links pushed onto grid.
You know what? I had that discussion so many times. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, it felt right and it still does. But if you think about it, the off-grid links also enabled like smaller groups, even solo guys, to have full links without putting it on grid, right? And being more
Yeah.
engageable. So,
But it
yes.
basically meant that you needed an alt solo. And it really
Not
kind of
necessarily.
made things kind of terrible. in Faction
Panda,
Warfare.
did you play in like factional warfare before they removed boosts? Like I have
It was
like a funny. There's like a meme picture, right, of like Huola, of me and Huola. There's 15 people in local. One of them's me, and then there's 7 like OGBs on scan. So like literally every single person in there has an OGB, and you literally needed an OGB to PvP, especially since the links there were so much more broken at the time too, because they were more powerful as well.
Yeah.
You would hit 6 to a T3, right? So you would.
It basically crushed people who didn't have alts. So yes, like the one person who had, and I'm saying this as somebody with 5 accounts, like back then it was awful, and having to put them on grid makes them so much more interesting. The command chip isn't just something in a safe spot with a million ECCMs so it doesn't get scanned. It's actually this integral part of the fleet that is there, right? Like, I think it's just better in every way.
Yeah, you know what?
Yes, it is good that they are on grid sometimes, and then other times I still cringe because my links get headshot by like 150 mutants. But yeah, it's mostly good that they're on grid, I think. But I definitely benefited back then just from having a smaller fleet of like probably like 30 dudes max. Way easier to spread those characters if they don't have to be on grid, because you
Yeah.
can put more people in other
I
things.
do
right?
agree. I do agree, though. Like, don't get me wrong. I do agree it was a good change. I was just
Yeah,
saying,
overall,
like,
it has
there
to
were
be.
situations where I wish the off-grid links were still a thing, right? Like when you're talking, especially that sweet spot, like small gang, let's say around the 10, 20 people mark that are trying to get a certain fight. And there's sometimes I would wish we had off-grid links so you didn't have to put like a command chip on field, but it still works, right? So
Still have like backpacks.
overall really
backpacks
Yeah,
positive.
you've got
and,
Bifrost now,
and with
right?
command DESIs being
True.
a thing now that they weren't a thing back then. Like you can still have these like mobile things that can give you links and then leave. Right.
True. You could technically, we saw that actually on a bigger scale too, like warp a Cloaky T3 in, align back to your ping, decloak, boost, warp to the ping, and technically everyone would have boosts, right? So you could still do it and be pretty safe, but yeah, that's way more work, of course, right?
Yeah,
Doing
you
that for a
could. I
long
think you
fight.
could use a Proteus, right? If you used like the
warping subsystem.
no, the old modification one, and you used I think Nomads on a Proteus, you could get it under 2-second align. So the Proteus was like uncatchable basically because it
Oh,
also had a
really?
cloak. So like warp in cloaks, like uncloak, drop links, warp out. It's not. It used to be like old nullified, right? And I
Yeah.
had a before they nerfed the nullified. I think this was it, so it had like a 2-second align, so it was impossible to catch it, and it could just like keep pinging and coming back.
Yeah, the nullify changes I'm not like too. I don't know. I don't like them, but yeah.
Well, we're supposed to be talking about best changes,
Exactly.
Panda. We're not supposed to talk about those.
Let's skip that. Forget I said anything. All right. What else? I've got filaments on my list, and I'm sure, Sotonia, you have them on your list too, right?
They're on
Oh
mine
yeah,
too.
sure.
They what?
They're on mine
It-
too.
Yeah, they're definitely really awesome. Unless you're a wormholer.
Especially they're on my list because they came in so unexpected. Nobody asked for it. I mean, sure, there were like similar things people suggested before, I'm sure. But when they came in as this Christmas thing, I was like, oh yeah, like, how can we exploit this? I was instantly jumping to that, of course. I'm an EVE player, right? And then I saw like, we can't really exploit it too much. It's kind of balanced. Surely, wormhole space, that part wasn't, when it comes to filaments, wasn't like, isn't the greatest, but from a nullsec, low-sec kind of perspective, and getting out roaming, especially as a streamer, right, Sotonia? You start in Jitter, and usually you would be forced to go, like, where can you go? Like, yeah, Horde space is close by, maybe Fraternity is close by, but you wouldn't end up in Delph, you wouldn't end up in, like, Esoteria or something. You would always go to the same space, probably, right? But then suddenly you could just be in random space and see where you get, like, it's like, it was mind-blowing, really.
Yes, I mean not just for solo, right? It's really good for pickup groups too, because like previously, like you don't really want to invite some guys into like your wormhole, right? If you want to like room with them, like if you're a small gang that's like I don't know, maybe you're like live in a wormhole, you don't really want to invite random people into a wormhole with you, but you can just teleport out of Jitter with them. That's fine. So it also makes it like good for like if you're roaming with people who are maybe like trials or something, like people who you don't really trust, but they're like trying to join your corp or something. So like a pretty fun way to like try them out without like having to give them access to anything.
Yeah, or like, what was it? Was it yesterday when we saw each other? And I'm like, I came to like give you a good fight, But then it turns out there was like a camp and stuff, and your mod was burned out. So I wrapped your ship quickly, and then we're like, hey, how about we just filament out together, right? Just join the fleet, and like we just instantly filamented, and I mean, obviously I died at the end. You kind of let me hang there, but hey, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we do multiple filament rooms every week. It's really changed how a lot of people play the game. We play like a little game. Everybody guesses what region we're going to land, and
I do that too
give the
sometimes.
winner a millionisk. Everybody who played give the winner a millionisk. I always guess Veil of the Silent because it's
That's
always such a
cheating.
best.
You gotta be more
Right, yeah.
creative.
Hey, pick the one that happens the most.
But yeah, it's just the time it now takes to get somewhere out in space, roaming, looking for targets. It's just cut down so much. It's just nice. It's just like great that those half an hour traveling around, looking where to go. It's just gone. You can just power filament and you're in action basically, or can be in action. Sometimes, especially in my case, sometimes I land in blue space in certain time zones, but in general, one of the best things.
No blues.
One of the best things ever, yeah. And then obviously the wormhole stuff I already mentioned. No? Man, I don't know why anyone I don't know why the filaments even work in wormhole space.
Wormholes, yeah.
I just don't get it.
Yeah, I'm very mixed on it, right? Like on one part, right, like I do think it is probably nice for wormholers to have the ability to do it because then they're not limited. Like if you were living in a wormhole kind of a small group, right, you might just have like a shit wormhole. Maybe you don't have enough people online to really like roll, or maybe you've been rolling for an hour, you got like nothing.
But you
Like
don't have
okay,
to
we can just
roll.
take a filament, right? So I see it there, but yeah, but I don't think the nullsec ones are not. I don't think the nullsec ones are really that problematic either. So I haven't actually heard any like wormholers complaining about the nullsec ones really until they added the Pochven ones, because the Pochven ones gives you a really reliable escape, right? Because you can guarantee get back to high sec from Pochven. Whereas if you use a wormhole, a nullsec filament to try and escape, like an eviction or with your crab fleet or something, like, and you end up in the middle of Delve, then it's not gonna work out too well for you, is it? So
But
Yeah.
even this, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, with the border filaments from Pochven, every one of the border systems is a Caldari system. There's just a few jumps from Jada, right? Border, scan the hole, or filament out again, and you're just safe, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
yeah, there's also a clay. I forget which one it is. I think it might be Perrin. I think that where there's like a constellation one where every single system has an NPC station. I think it's Perrin. So if you use like the Perrin clade like specific like filament to go to trig space, you always land in a system with an NPC station, so you can always just dock up there.
Yeah. But
Well, not if you have negative trig center.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
Yeah, I
pretty
know.
hard to have that unless you're actual Edencom.
Thanks.
But when it comes to wormhole filaments, I think it's realistic to say that even the smallest groups don't have a problem with like probing a chain into K-space, be it high sec, low sec, null sec. It's so quickly done. They usually have that ready. So yeah, if you live in wormhole space and you can't use any filaments, let's say there is just code-wise, it just doesn't work out to limit certain filaments from working there. They can only ban them all or none. Like yeah, then I would still say ban all filaments from wormhole space. If someone wants to roam out of wormhole space, yeah, jump into K space quick and then use it, and it's gonna be fine, right? It's like
Yeah, that's true. I think also they could add like one thing that I think they could do is just add like a spool up timer to it of like 30 seconds, for example. 'Cause 30 seconds isn't like a whole lot of time to lose if like having to wait 30 seconds for it to spool up is fine. If you're
so
just a
defenders have a
10-man
chance.
fleet and you're trying to get content, it doesn't eat up too much into your time, right? But if you're like trying to use it to escape in a wormhole, it's enough time for like someone to probe you and get a dictor on you or something, right? I mean, 30 seconds is a bit tight, but it would be possible, especially with like ships like Marauders and battleships and these crabbing ships, right? You can probe a battleship and warp a dick to it within 30 seconds. So
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's also one of the concerns. Like, people have in their own space. There's a roaming gang coming, let's say, to Fountain, and they just warp to a save and filament out, and you never had a chance to actually catch them, and that would enable them. But you know what's actually one fun solution that we talked about before is, what if you could jump after them? They leave the trace and you can just right click and say, okay, I want to follow, right? And you jump wherever they jump. Saying, but you have to be precise with that too, right?
I
Because
feel like
people
Would
could
that be
exploit that.
abused though, Pando?
So
Because
that's
Yeah,
what
peop-
that's let me finish. That's why I said you have to be precise, but it would only go to the maximum amount of things, right? So like, let's say they use a 5-man filament, then you would right click and it says, well, you can jump 4 people through, and then you say, okay, we want to follow, right? And then you go, but you can't jump like more than whatever it is, because a lot of times they don't fill up the entire thing, right? So
I like Pando's solution better because I like the fact that when you're roaming around in Null, being able to filament out discourages people from responding with overwhelming force, because then you won't take the fight if they bring 100 Marauders against your 10 Harbingers, right? But if they can only follow you to the maximum amount of the filament, they can't bring 100 Marauders. They can only bring 5, right?
I think it would still be abused in some ways, the Pando, right? Like what I would do, right? I'd say like, okay, we're gonna have like 7 guys in interceptors, and every single one of them is gonna open a 25-man, and then whoever gets the best one, we're gonna go inside that one with the rest of our fleet.
That's a
But
good
so
point.
you could kind of like abuse it
is a
that
good
way, right?
point. That is a good point. Yeah, it's something I haven't thought about. Like, yeah, you would just do like 2-man teams, really, right? Like one covered ops that probes and opens the thing, and then a dictator, you know? You just jump in, drop probes, warp to whatever you find, and, you know, if someone gets a tackle power, you follow, right? But maybe if you say that's like a minute only, it's a little tight then, right? Then you like, I'm just looking at it from a fleet organization point of view. Like which filament, like you have to line them up. You drop containers with numbers on, and everyone's like, oh yeah, everyone go to number 7, right? This is the golden the golden filament is number 7. We got some tackled. Just the organizational part is kind of like interesting already, but yeah, you're right actually. Maybe you should limit that to like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the 25-man filament shouldn't have that ability, but then again, I don't know.
Yeah, but then people would use the 25-man ones to escape because they're just the same price, aren't they, as the 5-man ones?
Yeah.
They're cheaper than the 5-man ones.
They are. Sometimes it always fluctuates a little bit, but they're basically the same price. Yeah.
It would be funny though to like if you used like a 5-man one with like a 4-man fleet or something, and then they try to follow you and only one of them comes through, and you just
That's why I said, and it has to say like, hey, so many people can still follow, right? Because otherwise you're warping to that thing, you don't know what it is, right? It might be a 5-man filament, might be a 25-man filament. You want to follow with your 5 dudes, but only one guy jumps. That would be horrible, right? So
that would be the time to get 3 friends, make a 4-person fleet, and like filament in front of the enemy fleets, and just see if one person try to like bait it out, filamenting on grid in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder the exploit if it's overall still worth it though. If you could exploit it, like what would it look like? Would you actually do this all the time with like 20 scepters? Maybe. Actually, I would probably do that all the time.
I probably would do it, but I realize that I'm like a turbo nerd, so I would do it for like seeding stuff, right? Like I don't care about like catching people. If I'm trying to like get like, I don't know, stuff from Fade to like a new deployment in Curse or something, right? I would just open like 10 noise filaments with scepters, and then just take all the DSTs through. If you get a Curse one, that guy just shouts and you warp to the Curse one, right? And then you go through Curse with like 10
and you
DSTs
could probably do
or
it with
whatever.
a shuttle. You just
Yeah.
take shuttles and open it off.
That makes it a lot easier to move stuff around. That's like a really good point.
Yeah. Maybe someone has the, wait a second, Styro has a good solution. Let me read this. You can only add double amount of the filament. So
if like 10 people take it, then only 10 can follow or something. But then like the idea, right, is if you use one scepter, then only one person could follow. So I guess that would be a good solution. So then that way, like if someone's scouting just by taking like one ship through, then only one person could go there, so it doesn't really change much.
Yeah.
I'm not 100%
That's
sure.
pretty smart. Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
that would be funny too, right? Because if someone wants to chase you and you're like, and you have like only got 5 guys or something, right? They can only bring 5 guys to chase you as well. So it kind of makes them probably like mess
Oh.
some people up.
Now I get what you mean. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that would probably make sense, yeah. But at the same time,
But yeah, people
Hmm.
could usually get 50 people through a 25-person filament, like was said in chat.
well, up to the maximum, I guess, but sure.
Yeah, so I guess
Up
if you
to
put
the
20 through, only
25.
5 could follow, because then it would be like the 25 max.
Yeah.
Guys, maybe we have to keep working on this. But guys, if you have
Yeah.
ideas for that, I'm gonna totally pitch it to someone. If it's a fleshed out idea, I'll pitch it.
Actually, I think CSP Aurora had a really good idea that was really similar to this, and that was like being able to follow someone for an answer blacks. Like if someone used an answer blacks recently, like the answer blacks like stays open for 30 seconds or something, and everyone can follow through at the same like full cost or something.
I was always thinking Ansiblexes, they shouldn't be ACL based. They should be either everyone can jump through or it's password protected.
I think they should just. I hate answer blacks personally, so.
Well,
I think they really destroyed a lot of small groups in nullsec because it just means that travel is like pretty much instant, and it makes like geography like way less relevant. But
yeah, I totally see
I
that.
kind of like the Pando. I kind of like the idea though of making them password based, because like the big groups, right, that have like passwords for answer blacks, they're obviously always going to be compromised. So then small groups could like use those passwords to like abuse the answer blacks in their space.
Yeah, I think so. But then I guess there would be bait Ansiblexes that have like a ridiculous price. So people are like, haha, we can use this their Ansiblex, and they jump through, and then they pay.
I mean,
like,
if they don't read what the pop up says, then
yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, that's very Eve. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just
people
a
used
funny
to
thing.
have outposts too, right? They used to have like 800 million like repair costs or something.
Yeah.
You could just turn the repair costs up
some insane stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be probably the solution when it comes to Ansiblex, because I think so. As a nullsec like block group, from our perspective, it's also like we need to get places too, right? And to move fleets from A to B, like you need to have those Ansiblexes. If you don't have Ansiblexes, I can't take these guys and take like 50 jumps into action. That's just not. It's not happening. I'm not going to form at all then. 50, like, I don't even know, 30 plus jumps. It's just too crazy. It's just too crazy. You can't do that. It's at least that's what I think.
What's your perspective then? Okay, so we had some fights recently in Cloud Ring between when we were helping some friends out, and you guys were coming in and fighting us, right? Yeah. So what's your perspective on those fights in terms of Ansiblexes? I know this is way different than the topic, but I'm actually just curious what your perspective is, because like while we're fighting, the dilemma that we have is we have way fewer people, right? And then you guys bring a fuck ton of people, and then it's very heavy tie-dye because of that. Well, okay. a lot of times, a lot of people, to the point where tie-dye is super heavy there. So then when we're fighting, like we are killing really rapidly, but you guys are actually able to reship people faster than we can kill you and get back into the fight with like there were several fights where we killed 100 plus hacks, and you guys ended up with more hacks on grid at the end of the fight than you started with, because the fight went on for like 20 or 30 minutes real time. No, more than real time, like 20, 30 minutes tie-dye time.
Then you
right?
need to ref
So that's
the
what I'm curious is like, how do you balance the jump bridges?
I don't know.
Well, one time they were refed, and you guys still made it in because you have to ref like 3 jump bridges to make it actually like depleted.
That's
right?
another point about jump bridges that I think is legit. Maybe there's too many. Maybe you should limit it per region or per, let's say, for example, regions have different amount of systems, right? Like let's say Fountain is one of the biggest regions in the game actually. So if a region has more systems, it should have like more ability of jump bridges. But maybe you can only have like, let's say, 10% of the systems can have a jump bridge. I'm just putting a number out there, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that would make sense, right? So you have some jump bridges, but it's not going to be like an insane like redundancy too, right? Like very important jump bridges in our space. There's probably 2 going in the same direction, just in case, because we need to
Yeah,
go.
just do one
we need
per
to go-
constellation or something then.
Or
And I'm
or
not
that,
saying
yeah.
that you guys are wrong for using it. Like, obviously, you want to use them the best way you can, and the best way is to just get super fast reships. But like, there were Goon fleets reshipping too from 1DQ, which I think I did the
Yeah.
math. It was
They
like
took the
26.
highway.
It would have been 26 or 30 jumps normally, and they did it in like 6 jumps or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, right?
Yeah. Especially Fountain is kind of unique in that regard because
Yeah.
there's that one massive jump, so you can cross that region so quick.
Yeah,
but
and Pappy does that. To be clear, it's not like just an Imperium thing. This is
Everyone
obvious. It's
does,
like a whole
yeah.
game thing, right? It's a whole game problem where like blocks can just quickly get across it. Like
Whole
I
block
think
problem.
Yeah, Pappy do it in the south too, and in the north as well. Like where they can, if they give each other access to their jump bridges. I mean, it's like just a few jumps, but it would normal time it would be like 30, 40 jumps potentially.
Yeah. Do you know Jordan from Skill Yourself, Pando? He said Answer Blacksters were actually like probably the main reason why they disbanded because they felt like they couldn't do their kind of like PvP anymore.
Yeah.
Because Feroxes could just go like 8 regions in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Antiplexes are actually not on my list of like positive changes because I'm not sure. Like, it's very hard to guess or like gauge like if it's like good, bad, in what regard, what's like how good, how bad, right? So
Yeah,
I totally see your points, right? At the same time, we need to get places too. Like if you have like a
of
big
course.
group,
Yeah,
you can't just sit like in Fountain or in Delve or in Kalevala or whatever and just sit there and wait. But I do wonder too, what would Eve look like without jump bridges if they weren't the thing?
yeah.
Yeah.
I do think part of this also stems back to the current meta though. I can't like pin it all on just jump bridges being jump bridges. I think are broken in their current state, but I think that also part of it is the meta itself, which is that you have these a meta that depends on mobility with hacks, right? So like
That
you're
will never
going. I think
change
it would.
though, I can tell you that right now.
I think it would look different though if the meta was like battleships, for example, with their current warp speed and stuff. It would just be
But that's why it's
a
not the
lot.
meta. That's
I
the
know,
problem.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
You know what?
So it's
I
both,
think
right? I'm just saying.
just
Both
balance,
things.
let's say balance wise and ISK wise, we take ISK and travel speed out. But just balance wise on grid, you're in a fight right now, you'd rather be in a battleship fleet than in a hack fleet in a lot of cases. Not saying all cases, but in a lot of cases. But you have to get there first, and when you die with battleships, they're just pricey, right? It's like, and then you can't disengage. You can't
course.
disengage really. So it's like that combination is just like that just makes for this meta, right? And
Yeah. Well, also hacks being as strong as they are. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, right? But hacks themselves, especially, I mean, not all hacks, but like mutants and eagles specifically being so the state that they are, right? There's not really many disadvantages to using them. Just creates this nasty combination with jump bridges. That's all I'm pointing out. It's kind of it's everything. But I was just curious what your perspective was in those fights, because from our perspective, we're like,
well, I wasn't in
we're
a lot
like,
of these.
yeah, I know, but you were there for some. I remember. I saw you. You can't hide.
Yeah, I was maybe in 2 of those fights, honestly.
Yeah.
The only fights I
But,
really like joined like several times was like when we had like a junior FC forming and he asked for some help against Try.
Gotcha.
And then we tried to, with the limited tools he had, and those were really good fights. But you know what's a shame? You know what's also a shame? This whole fighting with like Try, like just from a political point of view.
Oh yeah.
That only like before we did something there and we said like, oh yeah, let's have this jump bridge, which I don't really agree with us needing it, but whatever. But before that, there was no content happening either. Right? It took us to go there and say like, hey, by the way, we want a jump bridge across your space, and they're like, fuck you, no, we don't want this.
I wouldn't buy that
before that,
narrative, Pando. They were having
Yeah.
fights. Try was having fights in Syndicate regularly.
They
It
were
wasn't
having
in Cloud
fights,
Ring specifically.
but like we didn't get anything from it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's not like
Oh,
our
yeah.
neighbors. We were having good fights. Like if we show up there with like a comp, they're like, we don't really want to fight you. You're just gonna drop stuff or whatever, right? You
Well, you guys are
have to
huge
go
now.
for something. I know,
Well,
but
didn't
What are you
Dark
at?
try
10?
and say that
Is
he
it
got
10K?
tired of try tackling the Rookles? That's why they got evicted or something?
I don't know
What?
exactly. I just
Nah.
know. I think there's a lot that plays into what is
It-
said on fleet comps, right? It's not one
It's
thing,
yeah,
but
yeah. It's the political. Basically, what happened there was some of our guys want the jump bridge in Cloud Rain because it gets them closer to Jitter, technically, and it's just like a convenience thing. Trine's like,
Yeah.
all right, you're right. It would be kind of nice to have it. He approaches Tri, says like, hey, how about that? You know, we take these two systems in Cloud Rain. We don't want to do anything, but we just want these two systems to have the jump bridge. But the jump bridge goes right across their space, so they're like,
right. I mean, it's literally next to
no
their
big fan.
staging,
And that's what
and
I
they would have
said
to give
too.
up.
So
Yeah, there's
so-
no way, no rational group would ever
But-
accept an agreement
but
like
since-
that, right?
Since we're talking about jump bridges,
Oh yeah,
they kind of drive conflicts then, right? So maybe they're not that
can.
bad.
Yeah.
So
There's, you know what? There is an aspect of jump bridges that I do really like, which is that it's a one timer. Beautiful. Love that. If it's in your time zone, that is. If you're trying to shoot frat in your EU, you're kind of, out of luck. But
Yeah.
if you are EU showing another EU group and they actually time their jump bridge for the, their time zone, then that's great content generator.
yeah.
I do wish that if you had somebody pointed, they couldn't jump through an Ansiplex, kind of like how you can't dock at a Citadel if you're pointed.
Or at the
So-
very
Yeah,
least,
that's the number one change I want to see.
Yeah, because all the time, I'll find somebody sitting on it, like on an Ansiplex, like they just jumped in and they're like went AFK for some reason, and we'll warp over, and we just have to hope they don't come back to their keyboard because they'll just jump back, right?
or at the very least, capitals. Because so the way they were sold at that point when they were Ansiplexes was player built Stargates, remember? But if you have a cap on a Stargate and you get hit pointed, you can't jump. Not on Ansiplexes though. You can jump your carriers from one side, reapproach, kill whatever, and by the time the other side has formed a dread bomb, which on a certain scale, people are gonna be aware if someone's doing that. By that time, they're already deaggressed, they can already jump back, and you can't do anything about it. Yeah, you can maybe catch a couple at the end, right? But on a grand scheme of things, it's not realistic to think that's a way. But you can do this. You saw it in this war recently, right? You can just jump back and forth then.
Yeah, I wish. I think it would add a more interesting dynamic too. If you can take a jump bridge while you're bubbled as well, because then you could have cloaked dictors slowing people down and waterboarding people in Ansiblaxes. It's if you know that they're gonna come from a specific Ansiblax, right? You could have a dictor cloaked 5 kilometers off from the direction they're gonna come from, and as soon as they land on the Ansiblax, so your dictor decloaks bubbles, and then you trap their fleet for 2 minutes until they can smart bomb your bubble away or something, right? But then the person who smart bombs it, or if they kill your dictor, right, they get an aggression timer, so then they're stuck there anyway for at least 60 seconds, even if they smart bomb and kill your dictor or whatever, right? So I think it would add a lot more options to smaller groups, because you could waterboard and slow down bigger
I feel
groups.
like we're off topic.
A little bit.
A
But
little.
one thing I want
Yeah.
to say about Ansiplexes 2 is the jump in range, right? So you jump in, and then you're so far away from it, it's just so safe. It's very hard. It's
Yeah, because the
impossible,
model is so
basically.
big.
Exactly. The model is
yeah.
so big.
It's like a regional gate.
And
Yeah, but
so
Panda,
that's a little weird.
imagine how remember when you did that thing in Curse where you anchored a large bubble off of every single gate, and I think
Yeah,
Pappy
Great
had to
Wetlands.
burn an hour back to
Yeah.
delve through large bubble on every
Man,
gate.
they hated me
Imagine
for
that
that.
on every Ansiblax as well. That'd
Yeah,
be great.
yeah.
Well,
They
you can
hated
do
me
that
for
now.
one.
You just, yeah.
But yeah, if there was no Ansiblex and you would have to do 15 jumps or so, man, 15 large bubbles on the way in, and then 15 outgate and 15 ingate, man, you know how much time that is? You know how much you can delay people with it? It's craziness.
Yeah. Yep. Well, anyways, I only brought it up because, from my perspective, when we were doing those fights, we're sweating. Okay, we're losing one ship at this rate, they're losing 5 at this rate, but we need to de-aggress and get the fuck out of here because they're reshipping so
Don't do this
fast.
to
and
me. I
jumping.
wasn't in those fights, so I don't know what actually.
You would, Pando,
I'm
we
sure
killed
you
you
guys
in one of those fights.
slaughtered us, right? Because you're
Okay.
just but yeah, I was
No, I'm
probably
just
in
saying
one or
it's-
two fights. Yeah,
I'm just saying it's an interesting mechanic with how easy it's because we abuse it too, right? Obviously, we abuse it all across Declan and
Yeah.
Fade and stuff. We get all the way across Pureblind from the edge of Declan and instantly it's
So-
nuts.
All right, let's finish the Answer Blake stuff. It's gonna be in the future best changes ever. Did we not bring up our top threes? Did we go through all top threes, or does someone have a point left? I mean, you probably had some more points than 3.
I don't know that we ever
Who
even
got
said
one?
3.
What were your 3, Wolf?
I'm trying to remember now. I had one lined up, and then we talked about 2 or 3, like all of so many different ones already. Oh yeah, my third one was gonna be there was a time, and again I think this goes back to like 2013, and it was they rebalanced battleships, and the Megathron got a tracking bonus, and like they changed the Nightmares to an afterburner bonus, and like they redid they did a lot of the Navy battleships. They did Rattlesnakes. They did a bunch of the pirate battleships. There was a really extensive tier side with those as well that I really loved because it really brought those to the forefront too. And
Yeah.
we had a lot of variation in pirate and Navy and T1 battleships being used like all across EVE during that time frame as well. That was tons of fun too, and Tech 3s at the time. But the big thing was the tier side.
That change
Yeah,
was really
Kronos,
good.
right? That was Kronos expansion, I think. That was Dominion originally in like 2009, and Kronos was like 2014. I think that's when they like actually
May have been,
buffed, like a lot of the shit ones like Blood Raiders.
That's when like the Geddon became a drone boat. And,
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, they
and
changed
like
up
the
so many
Typhoon
things.
became amazing. The
Oh, the
Typhoon was
MJD.
amazing.
You know what? I don't have MJDs on my list.
Oh my god, you didn't play Boosh Desies!
And Command Destroyers, I forgot those actually, yeah.
Oh,
One
what
of
do you
the best
do?
I
things
mentioned
ever.
them
No,
during
you-
the links, but yeah, Command Destroyers are amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Being able to swap clones in the same station.
You know what? Just for the off chance, any CCP, like, if you self-destruct, no matter how, you should lose your timers, right? If you are in a new clone, but no. If you get shot and killed and you wake up in the same station, then you get rid of the aggression timer. But if you self-destruct in the same citadel or station, then you don't get rid of it. It does not make sense, right? So every time I filament into blue space, I have to travel back home, warp to the fucking Sino beacon, saying local, hey, someone kill me, to then get killed quick enough to wake up in the station I'm just sitting in, or was sitting in a second ago, to then get rid of the timer. Man, come on, right? I think if your pod dies, you get rid of the aggression timer. I think that would be just like a solid thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it doesn't make much sense that if you kill yourself in station, it doesn't remove it. You have to wait the 2 minutes of self-destructing your pod or whatever. Yeah.
It's weird, but hey, another point for the future best changes ever.
Did we mention skill queues existing?
I've got a long list, but we're also almost at the end, right? So I could run
Did
through
you see
some
the
points.
controversial ones now, right?
Can
I mean,
do
we
a
already did
future best
filaments
change?
and like controversial ones, no?
IS Boxer being banned. Because that changed things,
Interesting.
right? Because before, like every alliance had to have like a guy who was really good at multi-boxing bombers with IS Boxer.
I would agree. Yep, that's pretty nice. You know what's actually surprising that people forget always? Grid expansion.
Right.
The grid was tiny back then. That's one of
People used to
the
do crazy things with grid foo, right?
yeah, that was like a game changer. Sure, some people are like, "Oh, I miss the old, stuff like messing with the grid and stuff." But man, it didn't feel right.
Oh man, it used Panda. Did you ever have this thing? It was like really awful on like Intosis grids for some reason, where like you could like like the grid would only be like 90 kilometers around or something for some reason on like an Intosis node, and so like you'd have something where you'd like burn away and then you'd just like go off onto a different grid
With the
I
250
found
km
that
range in
sometimes.
Tosis.
Yeah, the grids on average were like 250 to 300 kilometers, right? But I found them like a lot of Intosis grids for some reason. I think it's probably because there wasn't a Celestial there and they're just like a random grid, right?
Yeah.
Like, because the node spawns in like a random save. Like the saves, the spots where you could go off the edge of the grid very easily just by burning like 90k or something. It was really annoying, actually.
I used to go off the grid all the time. It's so rare now. Like sometimes citadels will stretch out grids in weird ways and you end up going off grid somewhere. But like I'm always surprised because it happens so rarely now.
Yeah.
But it used to be like all the time. And that's a great change, honestly.
All right, then the next one on the list. Oh no, we talked about that. The Sino changes, did we? No, actually we didn't.
No,
No, we did it.
I think that was a really good one.
thank God.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree
Yeah.
with that.
I think we
Yeah,
It
don't
used
have
to be
to
so much fun when an FC would just follow you with a malediction that you couldn't interact with in any way that had a sign
Yeah.
fitted. So
Yeah.
Sino could be on anything. A Maller, a Corvette, Malediction. Now you just know if a pilgrim or something is following
Yeah,
you. you're
at
in
least you
trouble.
know, right?
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Alright.
Well, the worst thing ever was just the Sinos on like 2-second line interceptors because there was just no way you could ever like catch them and stop them, and they could just like follow you and shadow you the entire time, and there's nothing you can do about it like at all.
Yeah.
I am glad
Except-
they added the mobile
Observatory.
mobile
Oh, the
Sino
mobile
fields for just so it's easier to move people, but it has that spool up time, so you can't drop people with it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like whelp recons to just move.
Mobile Sino jammers should be somewhere on the list too. Right? That's super impactful.
They were
That's
kind of
pretty
shit though, weren't they, when they first came into the game? It wasn't until they like buffed them that people started using them. Because, well, I mean, we still used them, but they used to be like 400 M3, right? So they're like really
Yeah.
impossible to put in anything unless you're like in a command ship or something, an FC command ship, and you
Yeah.
specifically like made room for it. It was like really hard to just have one in like some guy's scepter or something, which was really
Yeah.
annoying. Or some guy in a zealot can't just have one. It has to be like some guy specifically making room in their cargo for it in a ship that doesn't need cargo, like a Damnation or something. But like when they reduced the cargo on them, and like I think they made it take 1 minute to go online instead of 2 minutes or something as well, that was like a massive change. Because before with the 2 minute timer, right, it was like so easy for someone to just put a Sino up. But the 1 minute actually added like a ton more pressure.
Especially when Rockers still had Sinos and stuff, right? That was like so weird. Like, yeah, sure, I put the Sino inhib up, but he just hits it before it's online, and then it's a 10-minute Sino cycle, so it's gonna be up anyway. So by the time his panic would run out, then his Sino would go down. So like, it's like the same time. So it doesn't even make any sense. But but those changes were pretty good. So I like it. And then the next one that we probably like, that everyone likes, is time dilation. Sure, you don't like time dilation when it happens, but it was good for everyone to be in the game, because the only alternative is lag, and lag isn't good, right? So I think that was like super impactful and positive. And I think that no one can really argue with that one, right? I think we don't even have to explain why.
Yeah, like the game broke without it. Like stuff wasn't registering that it was happening.
Exactly.
Or you just get black screens as well, right? Like before, like you just could, if you weren't preset up in a system, you would have to, like, if you had to jump in, like you would literally half your fleet would just have a black screen the whole time. So like it made a lot of people like unwilling to fight, right? But now with time dilation, I think there's still like a huge disadvantage to jumping into someone preset up, but it's like more because of what they have preset up rather than, oh, we're gonna get black screen coming in.
I still hate doing anything in time dilation, but it is much
Everyone
better than not
does.
having it
Everyone
for
does, exactly.
people of that size. I've heard some people say they like it because it gives them more time to think. But
That's why it's terrible.
I don't.
It is interesting. I can tell you
I've
that.
never thought in my life.
It is interesting.
It's terrible it's terrible with like siege timers and stuff, right? Because like your 5-minute dread siege timer turns into like 50 minutes basically. So like everyone and their dog can like come and gank it.
You know what?
It's obviously good for the game and necessary, but at the same time, it's also it reduces the skill cap in like every way in terms of fleet fighting, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be on the ball ever broadcasting or hitting your ADC or as an FC
obviously.
as well. It's like the easiest thing. I can fall asleep FCing tie-dye fights. It's just so boring.
Hey, remember
I
when
gotta
Triad carriers had to be like played by like someone who like actually knew what they were doing on like a really good PC generally, and now like Faxel is basically a requirement for like any capital group
Yeah.
because it's just so like easy and brain dead to
Yeah.
use the
But-
Fax.
Still, to say like tie-dye obviously necessary, so it's just not fun to play when you have it. So
On a big scale, like when you have like really big fights, for example, the boson trap, the Operation Enho kind of thing, right? The coordination at the time and all that stuff. in tie-dye everything goes so much slower. You can time it to a degree, but it's not as reliable to time logins and all that stuff. Right? So it's like it makes certain things actually interesting in those large fights because they're all so slowed down. You can actually discuss with an FC team what you want to do, right? That's why obviously also the whole M2 disaster thing was a little bit of a mystery to me, to be honest, because like everyone had the time like discussing things and talk about like what would you want. That's the solution, but you know, in a certain sense, sometimes it's kind of interesting to have tie-dye and have it slowed down. But I think overall, it's fair to say people would rather have no tie-dye. I mean, imagine those big fights that we had in this last war with zero tie-dye, everything runs smooth. It would be a game changer. Stuff would die just on a scale you wouldn't believe, right? That would it would be insane. So yeah. Maybe one day we
It
get
wouldn't
there.
be as like horrible as well, right? Because instead of like a fight taking like 16 hours or something, right, it would be like over in 2. So
yeah, if even. I mean, the more people involved, the more kill speed is there. So stuff would probably be like after half an hour, you would probably know what's up. Like
They'll bail before
exactly.
that gets to that
One
point.
side is eating too much shit. Like after half an hour, the fight would be over. So
this is a different psychological thing with tie-dye where you're like, yeah, I'm losing some ships, but it's not that bad because it's so
that is
slow,
also true,
right?
Yeah.
And like
And
when you're killing,
rightfully
it's
so.
like, yeah. Just
like how
you
many
can just
times?
Yeah.
How many times
No,
did
no,
you
go
see
ahead.
fights like with like 1,000+ people, and then at the end of the day, it's like 30 people died, and everyone's like, sure, you know, it's like a small Rome that really was lucky, you know.
Like the hack meta too, Pando. It's like you wipe out like a full bombing fleet, like 300 subs dead or something, and it's like 30 bill.
It's like 100 bill, maybe.
Yeah, I mean the biggest bombing run ever, that was 145 bill. Right, that's all. That's the biggest run ever, and nobody like they to even have so much shit in that one spot that probably won't even happen again, right?
Yeah.
And that's only 140 bill. It's not that much, really, if you think
it's
about
like a
it.
Titan now, right?
Yeah, it's like right now it's a Titan, right? It's like maybe a little less, to be honest. Titans, I don't know what the price is, but
and it's really nothing because it's just hacks. So it equates to nothing. Like it's weird how we went from scarcity where we've got, or like a normal times where like losing didn't really matter, to then you have scarcity and it's like, well, as long as it's just hacks, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
hacks or T1 VCs is all good, bro. But other than that,
I do have another interesting one that a friend of mine said earlier. Just a little one, but gun grouping.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Group guns.
That's a very good one.
I
that probably
people
helped
would
with
pick,
fatigue, with dilation too, time dilation.
Yeah. Did we say fatigue, by the way?
Jump fatigue is somewhere on my list too. Yeah.
Yeah. I hated obviously people really hated
right
the first version. Yeah.
Oh, when it was like a 30-day max blue timer.
It was rough. That was rough.
Yeah. Jump fatigue, ESS, we talked about filaments, we talked about skill queue, we talked about briefly. Then I've got multi-buy, multi-fit, multi-contract. Also pretty much a game changer. Like, just think about it. Yeah, for like an alliance guy trying to seed stuff, you had to fit every ship. But then again, I think some people enjoyed that part too, right? It's like a Care Bear kind of activity. Like, you're not like all that impactful, but some crazy people were out there thinking, okay, I'm doing stuff, I'm helping, right? And, you know, that was very much appreciated at the time.
Even
but,
like,
man, is that a good change?
Even like smaller scale than big alliances. Like, I used to run public faction warfare fleets, and I'd buy 100 Punishers at once, and I really enjoyed not having to fit them all individually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before that, I guess, or at the same time, being able to save fits at all, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like there was a time where you couldn't even do that, and then you started to be able to save fits, and there was like a cap on how many, and they expanded the cap.
Save fits, ghost fitting, right?
Simulating
corp fits. Oh
ghost,
man, alliance fits.
Yeah.
Simulating fits in game.
Yep, exactly. Ghost fitting. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's all stuff we take for granted now. Then skill queue. We brought that up briefly. Not too much to talk about, I guess.
People used to have to wake up. They have the alarm clock to change their skill.
Yeah,
before updates, they'd set a long skill because stuff went wrong.
exactly,
during
exactly.
updates.
You got to bed, you better have like a long skill, especially at
Battleship
the beginning.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were reminders
Oh,
before every patch. Remember to set your skill queue.
Destroyer and Battlecruiser split into racials.
What?
Destroyer and Battlecruiser skill split into
Oh,
racial
right.
variants. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a
Battlecruiser
bit of a
Destroyer.
controversial one though, right? Like I
Yeah,
like it because
people-
I got free SP because I had BC5 and Destroyer 5 and my
Yeah.
characters when it happened. But
Yeah, I was cool with
Yeah.
it at the time because I was,
Um,
There's
the
someone
way
who
it
I
said,
sucks
learned-
for new players to have to like train like every Destroyer and Battlecruiser hull individually.
there was someone who said, what was it? The SP protection for your clones, right?
Oh yeah, the
Oh,
skill
What's
point
on my
loss and
list?
death.
Yeah, remember
Yeah.
that? So
Clone
I like
upgrades.
that, but I also don't like that because it was always satisfying if you knew for a fact that you just killed somebody who is going to lose skill points. But
Or he had to pay 40, 50 mil at least every time he gets pulled, right? Yeah.
That
True that.
was horrible though because it basically prevented you from like flying like anything that. Like for me, especially, right? Like, I used to play Tyrannus a lot, and like my clone would literally cost like more than my Tyrannus.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. There'd be no reason to fly cheap stuff in Nullsec back then. As like a small gang solo player, because if I'm soloing in like a cruiser, like a T1 cruiser or something, my pod was way more than my cruiser. It's not worth it because I'm gonna die like 100% of the time, right?
Yeah.
At that point, I think it was a fantastic change.
I'm sure 99% of people appreciate the change. I just remember a few satisfying moments where I knew for a fact that somebody just lost a skill of some kind.
But yeah, you have a spy on comms, and you know the FC's like crying because they just lost like advanced weapon upgrades.
It happened to me so many times, I gotta say. Like, so many times I lost, like, Reek in 5. There was always the skill I always wanted to have on 5, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
So, like, man, I lost that skill at least, like, 10 times or so. Because, like,
Yeah, Eve
when it
used
comes
to
to the
be-
clone stuff and learning, I don't pay too much attention, and it's like,
Yeah.
so horrible.
Eve was a little more unforgiving then, I guess. A little more brutal, and I think maybe more people around who took satisfaction in really the ruin of others.
Yeah. All right. Blobs buff and conduit jump, pretty solid changes. I think everyone likes those. Clone
It's
upgrade
funny.
removal, we just
It's
had.
funny. The way like some other people have been using it too to like jump like other people's stuff.
That
out.
is true. I thought that was
AWOXing
the
with it.
funniest thing. Yeah. When I saw that happen, I was like, "Oh my god, that's funny." The probing changes. You remember you had to drop probes on like planets and triangulate and shit. It's like I don't even know how.
Oh
it
yeah, and
works.
do you remember the old like times it used to take to probe 2, Pando? With like max skills, right? It used to take something like 48 seconds. That was like with perfect skills.
Yeah.
But if you were a new player, it would like the base time was literally 10 minutes. So if
Oh
you just
my
had like frigate
God.
level 3 and like level 3 skills or something, it would have to wait like 6 minutes per scan.
And
It
if
was-
you
it
didn't
was
have
awful.
Astrometrics 5, you couldn't drop all the probes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god. And you had to drop probes one by one, you know, click
Yeah.
your launcher.
And it was chance based too, remember? So you could like the like combat probes used to be like have fast cycle times, but they were like really bad chance based thing. So like you'd literally like spam them and have to like wait like 10 times to get like a target, or you'd have to use like the
Yeah.
quest probes, whatever they're called, the 4AU
In-
exploration ones to catch people. But then you had like a 2-minute wait on those, so it sucked.
Insane. AoE DDs, I think everyone has heard those stories from back in the day. AoE DDs, then DDs on subcaps, that was ridiculous. Or I was talking to Mr. V actually. He reminded me you could, as a Titan outside a force field, if you knew the password, you could doomsday something inside the force field.
Yeah.
There was so many ridiculous things, or like AoE DD through the Sino, not even jump yourself and stuff. I mean, ridiculous stuff, right? So that stuff definitely good changes. Tracking Titans, were a thing. Then got nerfed, luckily. Then we got Horde Titans a couple years later. And I was like, dude, did we learn this lesson? What the fuck are we doing here, right? So, but Horde Titans got removed too, so we're good on
Removal
that
of
part
the
again.
cavalry missiles where they'd speed
It's
up
on
the
my
ship
list
when they.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bosun's getting nerfed too, pretty good as well, I'd say. Like, at least Bosun's versus subcaps. Because it was cancer to have to like have a ping on every single gate when roaming.
Yeah, it was too insane too. Yeah. Then war deck changes. I think.
Oh yeah, those were really good.
Pretty good. Yeah. The short. Then now we're getting into controversial, like at least slightly controversial area.
Yeah, these aren't best changes ever.
No, but
Yeah,
like
they're just like really nice. I mean,
Exactly.
the war deck change actually, like not for specifically for me, but I think for like people who just wanted to have like casual corps, it was a huge change.
Sure.
So
Because like before, right, you'd have to be like an NPC corps and have a chat channel together if you didn't want to get war decked, which obviously
Yeah.
like any small casual corp would. But now at least if you don't know the structure, you can't get decked. It's also really nice on like holding alt corps or something.
It also gives counterplay. Like if a group is war decking you and you need them to drop the war deck because you want to form an alliance or something, you can go shoot their war HQ. There's like a target an objective you can win.
Yeah.
If you want to force end the war. I think that's a really good change.
Yep. Then short range ammo buff. Right, so I'm very specific. That patch where the patch it was in was the what did they call
Surgical
it?
strike.
Surgical strike, correct. The Brawler's Paradise, like I'm not sure.
But awful. Don't ever put that in the same sentence as best changes ever.
Yeah, but like I'm talking specific. The short range ammo buff, I thought it was a good change. Just the short range. But
I love conflag now. It's so good.
Yeah, but there's also discussion about like smaller groups and not like being able to tank less because of it. Not only the resist, but also the short range ammo buff. So it's like, I'm assuming some play styles would still suffer, but overall I think it was a good change.
I have a question, Panda. What would you think if they reverted the resistance nerf from Surgical Strike, but they made the diminishing returns on like remote reps like more harsh than what they are now? Do you think that would be like a good change?
I think first of all, reverting the resist changes, definitely, right? And then the Logi stuff, yeah, why not? I mean, at the moment we don't have diminishing returns on normal Logis, do we?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like an amount cap, right? Like once you get like 40,000 EHP per second or something, that's when I don't know the exact number when it.
Yeah, and then you only get 10% or something, right?
Yeah, it like scales down the more incoming reps you get. I think the numbers are something like it takes like 20 Guardians to proc it, but like once you have like more than like 2 faxes or something, it procs.
I don't know. I think the Logi parts, I would just go with the resist nerf, like remove that and then see what happens and then go from there. I think that would be a fair thing to do. I think that combination of those changes was a little bit crazy because like if you do several impactful things at once, you don't really know for sure like what is having what impact right now. Is it a combination? Is it that specific one? Is it this? Like, so, that's, same with the ESS and the BRM kind of stuff. Like, why do this together? Why not do just the ESS first and see what works and how it works, adjust the ticks or whatever, and then go with the BRM on top of that later on. But yeah, I don't know how the combination would work exactly, to be quite honest.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of thinking like if you gave the resistances back, but then you like kind of nerfed like the incoming remote rep by like a similar amount, maybe not as much, it would like make it like better for like smaller groups without impacting like the balance in capital fights as much. Because like one of the problems right before, right, was like you needed like 8 dreads to break like one or it was like 6 to 8 dreads, right? I think it was 6 before because that was before the dread like buff in Surgical Strike where they buffed up the T2 ammo for dreads. But like before, I think it's like for every like one fax you had, it tanked like 6 dreads on a Titan or something. Before, when there was like no diminishing returns, so like if you literally drop like 30 faxes, like you could tank like a full like 256 dread bomb.
What I always talked about there is wouldn't necessarily go with diminishing returns based on the rep amount that's coming in, but on the amount of rep modules activated. Because then that gives incentive for like faxes to fit faction reps. because then you can squeeze more rep power out of it, right?
But couldn't
Wouldn't
you
that
just
screw
put like
over,
a
like,
bunch of like
T1?
small reps on to make more
No,
number of
what?
reps on?
So what you would do is then, like if there's a certain amount of reps, you would always count the ones that rep the most, right? So those would apply so and so much percentage, right? Let's say the repper that reps the most has 100%, and the next 5 would only rep like 90% and so on, right? So that's how I would see it, how I would stagger it. But I don't know if that would add to complexity and therefore tie-dye, right? It's always a thing too. But yeah, I don't know. That's the approach like I would have taken maybe. But I don't think that's the issue. I think the resist thing was the issue in that patch, 100%. But yeah.
Maybe they should revert the risks and buff small gun, like close range ammo even more. And
Yeah.
I'd be down for that.
I don't know. As long as the resist nerf is getting reverted, I'm probably fine with whatever comes with it. To be quite honest, like everything else is peanuts. At least it feels like it. I don't know. I could be wrong.
That would be like in terms of best changes ever. Although they put us in a situation, that would be like the best thing they could do right now. Revert that resist
Yeah.
nerf, and you get so much more out of the game just instantly.
Yeah, and like I'm pretty sure they must be looking at this.
They said they
ever
were.
since, yeah. So hopefully it's
CCP
coming.
said on Reddit that they were at least. So if you
Yeah.
count that,
Oh yeah, in
then I think they would.
the Declarations of War podcast, I think Snorri brought it up that they were looking at surgical strike.
Then, in the category of like best changes ever, like best future changes ever, right? All right, then my last couple
Yeah.
points. No multiple MWDs. We talked about that shortly. You used to be able to fit several MWDs. Insane, right?
Make all
Then
your missiles at that
Remember,
once.
remember in like 2006 when there was like 7 different ways you could increase your speed. So the old Orcs rosters used to be like MWD speed and overdrives. Polycarbons reduced your mass, so they weren't like stacking penalized against like anything else. And then like the old nanofibers used to reduce mass too. So you could go like nano overdrive and then like Orcs roster like rigs, and you could go like 6k a second in a Dominix or a Typhoon.
Yeah, and then I think
That's pretty funny.
the last point maybe the monitor and
Ooh, I don't know about that, man.
Oh no.
Fuck monitors.
you know what? Not every point here is like from my list. I'd never fly monitor really. I'm just saying. I don't
Pando
want to
take no legal responsibility for these suggestions.
No, like for most of them I do. The
Okay.
monitor is regarded on FCs as like a positive thing though. I gotta say, most people, it's frustrating to be like, you put a shit ton of time and effort in, right? As an FC of a bigger group, then you enter the grid, and every ship on grid that's yours gets instantly headshot. I mean, it's very
I can see it. Okay, so it's definitely beneficial in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But it also fuels like a lot of really bad mindsets among FCs, I think. Like when you see a monitor and there's like 20 DPS ships on grid, that's a fucking joke.
Do
Or
you
like
remember,
you see a fleet with 5 monitors in it. I've seen that.
Were you there were you there when we were like doing a nano gang against like X-Def, and we literally had like 14 ships or something, and they brought like an 18-man Caracal gang or something with a monitor?
Yeah, exactly. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just I think that I don't know if it's I don't know if monitor itself is the cause, but it definitely is part of an awful mindset among FCs these days, where it's like, I have to have a monitor, else I might get headshot by these 10 guys.
Like, I don't fly in super big block fights. They're almost, I can count on one hand the amount of fights that I'd worry about being headshot if I was like in a command ship. It's like people bringing monitors to like 20 versus 20 fights are nuts. You're just losing a ship.
I gotta say,
hilarious.
it depends. Like, it always depends on who you're fighting, right? So the only fleets I ever fly monitors in are those I actually FC, or I have to like be the anchor, or I expect at least to fight like around 100 dudes and mutants, because any cruiser size stuff I would field, or like battle cruisers, if it fits in a comp, you would get
Yeah.
zonked, right? And then you're off the grid, and then you have to have an alt and all that stuff. And then I usually fly weird shits, right? I don't fly mutants or whatever. So then there is like very few FCs that could take over, if any, really, because it's like a weird thing to fly. Like, let's say last Geelers, right? For those who have ever seen
Yeah.
those, it's like I don't think I would be able to fly them in a lot of cases, really. So
Yeah, I get that. And there
Yeah,
are times I've
tricky.
used the monitor, but I loathe using it. I hate it. It's so boring for me because I'm used to being in a ship where I'm gonna be able to contribute something to the fleet besides just calling targets and anchoring, if that, right?
Yeah, I
And just
totally
surviving.
see the negative points about, and I personally try to avoid flying it whenever I can, but I cannot deny
Yeah.
that it had like positive input too. Like, is it more positive than negative? I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on it, to be quite honest.
I've got one for
I
you
see
that might
what
be
you think.
controversial as well, which is again it goes all the way back to that rebalance time of like I don't know, there was a ton of iteration at this time, I guess, around 2012, 2013, I think it was, when they rebalanced all of the medium-sized long-range weapons, artillery, rails, beams, missiles, and everything. Actually, I don't know if they touched missiles, but they definitely touched those 3 turret platforms, and they reduced the fitting costs, and they increased the damage and changed a couple other stats, and basically made them the meta. And it wasn't adopted instantly. It took a little while for people to start doing it, but that's what made railroads possible, beam
But isn't that
legions
a
and
bad
stuff like
change
that,
then?
right?
I mean,
I don't know.
medium weapons have been the meta since then, right? I think that was the Inferno
Right.
expansion, and they nerfed heavy missiles in the same patch. So
Okay. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, and I don't know if it's because it's weird because I've had so many good fights with those platforms, right? Like Tech 3s with medium beams and fucking rails and stuff like that.
I
But at the same time, it's horrible in terms of the actual balance between short range weapons and what we have now. But they are also fun, so
Asya, what you
I was gonna say, like, in the case of like, I like heavy beam legions on like a harbinger, but like when you do look at like the giant fights with all the mutants, like that is problematic, right?
right?
And it
Oh
really
yeah.
depends on where you are, how you see that. Like, if you
Before
are in
Surgical Strike, right? Like didn't like a 250 millimeter like rail gunship like did like only 10% less than than a blaster ship. Like when you have like antimatter in both of them, it's like kind of no reason
yeah,
to
there
have
was
these short range
it was
weapons.
like beams on everything, beams and other long range weapons because it was like the same damage. The short range ammo buff was amazing. The conflag and hail and all that.
Yeah. All right. So now, actually, there's one point that's really like close to myself, and fits obviously it's called FC chat, right? That I want to bring up, and that's the last point. Then I think actually we're a little bit over the time, but which is fleet structure and fleet finder, right? The fleet structure of like having to move your boosters to like one on fleet command, one on wing command. If you want a third type of boost, you need to move them to like squad command positions, and then those guys would only be the guys to warp. So the FC would have to be in fleet command, so he has to be in a command ship. And it's like, oh man, that was such a mess. And then someone dies, and the other guys don't get the boost drop down from the other dudes, and you had to have the skills and. Oh my god! Like
True.
complexity
Yeah.
for
You know what was
complexity's
also great,
sake.
Pando, is that the person in like the wing command position didn't used to get the bonuses from the fleet command position.
Oh yeah, I don't even remember all the details.
We
Right.
found that out during like AT practice. Like the person in wing command like doesn't actually get any benefits from like people with links in the fleet command.
I mean, that was just such a mess every time you form a fleet, and then first of all you have to sort everything out. There's no quick form 5 minutes. No. Just take it slow.
Yeah.
We like half an hour of sorting people who has a command ship, like in bigger fleets, man. And then the fleet finder, I'm not talking about the new version of it, which is also pretty cool, right? For like public fleets and stuff like this. But we didn't have a fleet finder you couldn't
I used to
you
have to
couldn't
type
look
X in
for
a channel.
exactly. You would have to
Yeah.
get invited by Xing up in the channel.
Join up
Insane.
the XMe channel.
Yeah.
You know, Panda, I'm sure you use this feature as well, where you can where your application has to be approved. I'm sure you go through every single init member as they apply to your fleet, right?
I certainly don't, but yeah.
Yeah.
That fleet structure change is gigantic because now you don't have to worry about what the fleet structure looks like, and you can invite people from like other groups as squad commanders, so they can invite their people, and it doesn't matter because everybody's still going to get the links.
Yeah.
Right?
Somebody talked about in your chat about multi-boxing, by the way, and he's asking what you think about it. But I think that without
Well, we-
multi-boxing, Volta would be like really screwed over. I mean, we would not be able to take so many fights without multi-boxing. We would be done. We could not like stand a chance at some of them.
But
Because there are
this-
fights where our mains
so-
are like a third of the enemy, but with multi-boxing we make it like 2-1 instead.
But you have to see it like this. If we're talking about there's no multi-boxing, obviously there's no way to do this, but let's just assume nobody can multi-box, everyone has just one character. It would be a way different game. So you would have like all like Volta would be way
Yeah.
different. So you know,
Can
I
you
think
imagine
it
being an
would probably be
FC
fun.
Panda where you can't control your own probes and you have to have a dedicated guy to probe for you? And if you
can.
want to move a jump freighter, you have to have like a different guide but with like
Oh my
every single midpoint
God.
sino.
There's so many
Yeah.
roles
Ah.
in this game that are just almost designed to multi-box, where you wouldn't want to do it as just the
Yeah.
only thing. And
Yeah, that's the thing is the groups that are better at it can max out the multi-boxing quite a bit more than, I don't want to just call it blocks here, but we'll call
Right.
it a block like in it, for example. You know, a large alliance with like 10,000 plus members, right? I assume that we
11,000.
probably multi-box more than the average init member, but I don't know for sure, right? But we generally, you know, some people are gonna be up to like, you know, quad boxing, like
Yeah, you know, it's interesting
more
actually.
than that sometimes.
I just recently like started the Alchar utilization initiative in
Yeah.
it to push for more people to multi-box, because like there's some
Yeah,
easy roles you can do on the side and people are not too comfortable with it because they don't have to. We usually have the numbers, right? But it would be nice if we have a full fleet of Munins. Would be nice if I also had a full fleet of bombers, right? Man,
Yeah,
that
see,
would
I'd
be the
rather you
dream.
guys not multi-box both things because it's insanely easy to multi-box mutants. It's actually terrifying to think if like blocks truly multi-box, like fucking 4 mutants in those
It's
tie-dye
also
fights.
easy to
That's
multi-box the bombers because they, actual
Yeah.
time of like a couple seconds, I warp them in, and then you
Right.
just like click the magic button,
Ugh.
guys, and get out, and then focus on your minion again, right? So
Yeah, of course.
yeah, I'm pushing
But it's
that a
a-
little bit, I guess.
it's a necessary thing for us specifically, and I think blocks can mostly get away without doing it, but I'm sure it's always useful, right? Always useful thing, and nobody's
Yeah.
going to complain about competent multi-boxing. Although you might be a little sad if you like just leave your links behind or something every fight.
I mean,
Yeah.
like Starfleet losing his ult like every fleet.
Yeah, the only way we get a good
I
fight is if
do
Starfleet
too.
sacrifices his prober right at the beginning of the fight.
It's a meme in Init. Like it's only like we only get a fight if I lose a scout, basically.
Yeah.
Every fleet I lose a scout though.
I feel like every alliance has a meme like that
Yeah.
because even Alexis Matari has a meme where it's only a real fight if Deebs' ult dies because his ult gets killed every.
And now with
Every
NPCs
fight.
on the gates. One of the worst changes, by the way. Just saying.
For
God,
you
those-
maybe. Yeah, for
hate
lazy
it.
multi-boxing FCs, right?
Horrible.
Oh, you like tab out of your saber character, tab back in, and it's fucking dead or off armor or something because of 10 gate rats.
You know
on the
what? I've
same
got a
fucking
sound
gate.
alert for people that can just say, like, when I don't pay attention, I've got my alt on the screen, and then they can say, like, check your scout. But I
Yeah,
always
I've-
get it when it's too late. It's like, I just died.
You know,
Check
Panda,
your
sometimes I
scout.
do that. I give you that notification on your stream just to distract you. I just do it for fun. And
Wow.
I don't actually want you to check your scout. I just do it.
Thanks.
Oh, this is the meta, right? You
Yeah.
constantly do it, and then he eventually like knows that it's just someone fucking with him, and then he
Yeah,
gets beat
he
because of
trolled.
it.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe
Perfect.
you make me lose even more scouts. Yeah. That's basically the war on the Imperium. We have to evict you, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's
We
alright.
can't
Somebody
aff-
will finally
We
do it,
can't
man.
afford
Come
all
on,
these dead
hurry up.
scouts. But yeah.
Yeah, somebody evict us, please. I'm begging you.
Guys, but I think we are at 2 hours. Usually we aim for like an hour and a half. But it was great fun talking about all these like old school changes, and to just think back of like what like what dumb stuff, really dumb stuff was in the game, and like how
Yeah.
things worked and stuff like this. So yeah, thank you guys for coming on. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And yeah, we should do it again with the best future changes of all time.
Yeah, so in 10 years,
Then they won't be the
we'll do
future.
we'll
I
do
hope
a
not.
decade rerun.
I hope next week, all right? Maybe next week, like we get a dev block, and that's just like the best ever, and we instantly have to say like, man, gotta
Everybody
come back.
get your crystal balls out.
Yeah.
Let's-
Yeah.
let's
If
look into
if
the future.
CCP Rise reverts Surgical Strike patch, I'll come on here again next week and I'll say he's the best dev ever. I'll send him a
Alright.
Starbucks gift card or something. I'll do anything, just fucking revert it.
Man, I'm gonna do like a 24-hour party stream if they like touch Citadels. I'm telling you right now, it's gonna be like, you know.
Yeah,
But yeah,
sounds good.
What if they buff him, Bando?
Yeah, what if they
They're
buff
touching him, right?
yeah, then you won't see another stream. Honestly,
Wait till
I
they
don't think I
add
could
Void
take
Bombs
it.
back.
I don't think I could take it. I don't think I could.
Reintroducing Void
I
Bombs to
think,
deal with Munins.
You remember when they was gonna add the GTFO module, like stand-up version of it to keep stars?
Oh my god, stop it.
They should add that to Astro Houses and Afnos.
Yeah, I want a 4th time run Citadels personally. I'd actually love to have 4 times.
But a really
Why don't we get
long one.
Citadel's jump drives, guys?
Oh, yeah, we could just jump our keepsters onto
Oh,
each
you know, like in StarCraft 2, the Terran can have their like, the
Their buildings
thing
can
take
fly.
off.
Yeah.
You know what? I gotta stop you guys before you guys give like CCP any ideas. They're like, oh, actually, right? It's like, oh my god. But yeah,
Yeah,
guys,
Citadel should be able to use MJDs too, man. So then you can like no scope like your photos are onto someone and PDS
Stop
to
it.
kill them.
stop it. I'm gonna mute you. Guys,
Should be able to PDS through a Sino.
thanks for coming on. I'm gonna send these guys away. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. Special thanks to Mew, Ash for the host, and Cyro, thanks for the bits. And guys, see you guys on the next one, right? Friday. I'm not sure. It's probably gonna be the Parchment edition, or maybe Faction Warfare. I haven't decided yet, but we'll see. All right. See you guys around. Bye bye.